Joining me now to discuss this further is Executive Director at the Henry Jackson Society, Dr. Alan Mendoza. Thank you very much, Alan, for joining me this afternoon. To what extent has Putin been weakened by the events of the last 2 days?
Well, I think he's undoubtedly been weakened. I mean, essentially, firstly, his whole rationale for the war has been publicly, sort of told as a lie on television and on social media channels. So that can only be a weakness in his approach. Secondly, he's had a mutiny that took control of Russian military headquarters and then looked like it was heading up the road to Moscow with very limited sort of attempts to stop it. That could only have been construed as weakness on his part. And then we still don't know what's quite ended up happening. Yes, we've heard that sort of Wagner have now, kind of disappeared and will be going to Belarus or will be sort of immersed in the Russian armed forces. But, it's unclear sort of even into the short term what that actually means in practice. There's a lot of uncertainty as a result.
An expert on global politics, foreign affairs. What does this mean in terms of the entirety of the world and the different powers competing? What does this mean for China, for example? Does the weakening of Putin mean a greater role for China and other regimes?
Well, I'm not sure it leads to a greater role for China in terms of in this conflict. I think Putin's weakening is really to be looked at in terms of what it means for Russia right now. And for Russia, it shows that things are going very badly wrong in Ukraine. They're going very badly wrong in Russia itself. And it's less a question of others taking up the space that Putin took. It's more a question of really how stable is this regime into the medium term, and will we see a change of leadership soon that'll make a big difference to how Russia itself faces upwards, and that is what will have an impact then on other countries following.
So what does Putin do now? The man has been bruised, potentially humiliated by what has happened. What can he do? His goal will be to quickly end this war as possible. What can he do to escalate matters? Will he escalate matters? Does he have control over his own military? What happens next?
Well, I think he's got control over his own military. I mean, don't forget this was a mercenary force. There was essentially an adjunct to the military force that he lost control over. And when you invite mercenaries in, you must always assume that at some point the mercenaries may decide to try and sack Rome rather than go and sack the barbarians. So there was always that aspect. But what he really needs to do now is to, I suppose, send a message. You've got to remember Russia is essentially a criminal mafia state. The Godfather's authority has been challenged. It's sort of been the challenge has been sort of seen off accidentally. I wouldn't be surprised if either Prigozhin now has to go and prove himself in some way that he's loyal, i.e., if he does end up in Belarus, that he menaces Ukraine from the north and does something for Putin to show he's coming back, or frankly, we might end up with his corpse appearing very shortly, because that's the other way the Godfather can show he's restored control over this situation. I don't think it makes any difference, particularly on the battlefield right now. The counteroffensive isn't, leading to a massive sort of push through the Russian lines at the moment. So he can hold that firm in Ukraine itself. And it's really a question of how he reasserts, I suppose, internally his authority that now matters.